Hello, everybody. We have today artist couple, one can say, working together. Although, as I invited Una, is because first time when I met her was on application for to get into the program media. MAP, Media Arts and Praxis at Academy of Applied Arts, University of Rijeka. This was many years ago for me, maybe not for her, but it was very impressive meeting. And actually, she already came before to me to ask me a little bit about the program. And I found extremely interesting what she was doing before. And she will talk, of course, a little bit about that. And then she was a student, and I was one of the mentors on her final degree. And this was a very special, huge book that she printed, and she will talk about that as well. So she was definitely one of the best students at the academy. And unfortunately, I allowed them, or I told them they should go, suggested them to should go, use Erasmus possibility. So she and a couple of other students went to Ljubljana, which was very nice for one semester. But then she stayed the second semester. So actually, that was her destiny also, which I find not disappointed, but very happy that she found her more interesting life with the Metod. So Una and Metod, please let us know a little bit more about you and your work.
Hello. Cool. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. So I don't know, maybe I can say a few words and then you, or the other way around. Say a few words about your background, and then I'll say a few words about my background, and then where we join, where we connect. Yeah. Where we connect, and we'll go from there. Yeah. So basically what Inga said is all correct, plus the words of praise that I take, I don't know if it's correct, but I take them kindly, and thank you very much for these kind words. What Inga omissed maybe, or did not mention, is that I actually started working or practicing art, if you can say that way, quite late in respect to the students who enroll into the academy after university. Before that, I studied design, and for many years I was working within that sphere and within the sphere of event management. And maybe the closest thing where I got to art was actually when I was VJing at events, and that was very very creative, very artistic, one of the more artistic kind of outputs I had. But after some time, I really got through, series of events that one would say accidental. One is actually studying for a year visual arts in Venice that I did not plan. And the world of art opened to me. So I came into this kind of world at the end of my 20s, full of ideas. And once I started studying at MAP, at Media Arts and Practices in Rijeka, it's just, you get into this hyper production and you want to do everything. And still the kind of the constant of my interest was always kind of the topics of time, of transformation, of our nature, and of this communication within nature, within our own nature, and what does that all even mean? So that is kind of how I started exploring what you will see also in our presentation, and this is also the reason why I went to do my second year in Slovenia, and this is where I met Metod, and then you can say a little bit about yourself. So we met in 2015, and I'm gonna go backwards. So we met in 2015 while I just moved to
Slovenia, I spent 12 years in Britain, where I worked as an artist as well as graphic designer and an educator. But the reason why I was in England was because I did my master's at the Slade School of Fine Art in London at the UCL. And before that, I did my BA in Scotland, in Aberdeen, where I studied sculpture, though I haven't done sculpture for 20 something years, like sculpture, proper sculpture. And the reason why I went abroad is because I've never actually got into the Ljubljana's Academy to study art. So that's sort of like reverse working. But in my practice that I developed after my master's, went specifically into the notions of journeys, traveling and exploring space over time, whether that being physical or mental or conversational and so on and so forth. In that respect, I did a couple of artists in residence where I've explored my interest through cities and landscapes, and explored it visually as well as through various notations. And then in 2015, when we met with Una, we connected on several levels, including art practice. And soon after, or while Una was doing her master's, we've already been doing our first sort of like process-based action that resulted in half of a diptych, O Paraíso.
Yeah. So maybe we can start our presentation. Yeah. We'll try to not to keep it too long. But since Inga mentioned, one aspect of our practice that has to do with, this walking practice, we focus the presentation more of that. And so maybe we're gonna start talking about it. And does this work? Does everybody see it? Okay. So just a brief, I just remembered one of my first kind of walking and trekking exercises was at university with Tomislav, when I was doing my performance of mapping this space of a garden. And I was actually notating this movement with Strava, so with this tracking app. So I was very interested in this, I wouldn't say performative, but just this, just the physical and this ephemeral trace that the movement leaves, and the journey in time that happens. And then with Metod, we kind of really saw that this is one of the points where we really connected, and we decided to do a journey together. Because
at the time, I started tracking perimeters in the world, sort of like cities. At the time I was living in London, but I was going to Tokyo for an artist in residence where I thought that the best way to explore and get to know the city was to explore it through walking or cycling. And so I've embarked on, at the time it was something like 430 kilometer large mega drawing across the metropolitan part of Tokyo. And that sort of sparked the idea, or maybe I could do that in London once I return. And so I started doing these perimeters, and now there are about 6 perimeters, 7 perimeters that I've done, 2 of which were in London and 2 of which were in Ljubljana for various reasons. But these sort of like allowed me to explore the town on various levels, not only on going from A to B, but actually purposefully going out and aimlessly, in inverted commas, exploring the urban scape to get to know the area that I'm surrounded by. Yeah. And so then since Metod didn't have this walking experience of
a long journey, and I really wanted to include that in part of my master thesis. We embarked on the first journey together, which was on following Camino de Santiago, the French route, in 2016. And we've traveled on foot for 29 days, covering total of
860 kilometers.
860 kilometers. And I walked 3 days less because I had a foot injury, a foot fracture, but generally I've covered 730. And these are just a few of the images, just to give you kind of a mood, which really isn't reflected in imagery, as images often do not show the painful side of the experience, which was then recorded in notation. And so Inge mentioned my my master thesis. Basically, this is what is the result that I've submitted for as a box with all these experiments that I've done, and that can be then shaped and transformed and presented in various ways, depending on space where I would want to show it or media in which I would want to show it. But basically, this thesis was actually exploring time through 4 different aspects. The social time that kind of we share, what does it mean? The personal time, so the kind of the psychological aspect of time. So that was covering me tracking time and what I did for 5 months every minute of the day. This social time was actually me removing myself from time and documenting how it was to be off time, not to be dragged into these hyper-productive phases. And then there was another, there was the aspect of how would I call it, scientific notions of time that I also explored through experiments in photography. But this one was actually kind of exploring this spiritual aspect of time, and what does it mean to the journey of Camino de Santiago, this pilgrimage or this long endurance walking. What does it mean to really get into this cycle, into this repetitive cycle every day, to commit to being on this kind of difficult journey, and what it can give you, and all these kind of encounters that you really have with your own self, because you're on such a long you're on the way, and you're there with your own thoughts. So basically, it was documenting a lot more in text compared to photography. So that resulted with a book of kind of notations that go together with photographs. And then the second year, we did another Camino. I don't know, it seems that we kind of like diptychs and triptychs, and even repeating the things that we have done, or I don't know, taking a step further, although it was shorter. This was 350 kilometers, and Metod's mom joined us on this one. Here you can see her on the middle left picture, Metod healing her blisters. So that journey was, I mean, I can speak personally, very easy compared to the first one, because the first one was painful because of all the physical pain that I did not take into equation, and because of the lessons and the kind of this really there, I know you probably most of you have heard of Camino, and you know that people go there for different reasons, from religious to just kind of soul seeking, and when people are burned out and need some downtime. And really you know, at the end of the day, you realize that, you know, you go on Camino just so you can apply all the things that you notice about yourself in your daily life. So this second one was was much easier to embark on, at least.
Yeah,
I mean, for me,
the difference for me between the two, I call them drawings, but you know, we can call them actions or process-based actions. Was that obviously the time frame that one took over the 3 weekends, basically good 2 weeks, and the first one was over a month, and then we needed to get back as well, which took a while because we parked our car in France on the other side of the Pyrenees, and we were at the Atlantic, so we needed another 3-4 days to get back to the car, and then another 2 days to get back home. So we, for me, these two walks were quite significant, because if I was on my own, I would seriously push myself. Here I had to consider people that were around me. You know, one day, that one before the last day, something happened. I got lost in the woods, and I got so annoyed that I decided to walk to destination where we would meet with Una the next day, and that was 74 kilometers. So this would be the level of walking that I would potentially do. You know, sometimes just too much, not enough enjoyment, not enough looking around, just mindlessly applying the goal or the aim to the rhythm, and that would be a completely different experience. I mean, I do that on a bicycle, but on walking with other people, that's you know, other people sort of like put some brakes on these my stupidity that I have. That's how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting, but maybe we can open that for discussion later. But I think that's an interesting part of collaboration in general, with and that's what makes it interesting for me to collaborate with people, because you need to you know what your limits are. Sometimes you need to push your boundaries, but you also need to respect both parties, and negotiating that and finding that balance. And I think that's very interesting, and I think this is what we're practicing now. We're gonna get to that later, because this you know, Metod's obsession with space and with kind of the, you know, the set idea of what we're gonna cover versus, you know, just this being in the space and us time. In time, and it doesn't matter, you know, where we end. So kind of this constant kind of trying to reach a goal, but also valuing just the process and being in it. And so how important is, these are the conversations that, especially after the last trip, that we're going to focus on more, keep posing how, you know, how essential it is to be there's this word that I'm not going to use, but pedant, or not pedant, and like really specific, like not to skip a kilometer and to reach a goal in comparison to actually being fully present and experiencing the moment and every day of this journey and what it gives you.
To be true to the set goal, you know, yeah. How far do you want to, or do you let yourself or allow yourself deviate from?
Yeah, and what does it bring you?
Yeah.
So yeah, basically, you know, we wanted to include some of the presentations because, you know, this is always the question of how we present this, because these at the end of the day it's an experiential process, and the idea and the ideal is that people would, you know, go experience something similar themselves. So I think our documentation and the kind of the books or shows are just kind of wanting to inspire people and engage them in the process. So
to do something similar, to try it, to attempt it, to give it a go and see what happens, because our experience would be completely different to somebody else's.
Yeah. So in 2018, Metod will say more about it, but he was supposed to be having a solo show, but figured he couldn't have.
Well, the reason why I didn't want to have a solo show is because more than half of my practice, art practice, and now turning design practice as well, is collaborative. I worked in various forms, like in duos, in groups, in collectives, in cluster research groups, in you name it. I've tried it, and I've done everything from collaboration to cooperation to teamwork to etc. And I couldn't justify having a show on my own where more than half of my practice have been contributed or wouldn't have happened if I didn't work with other people. And therefore, I have invited several of my collaborators into the show, where I would kind of like create this program and they would sort of like join in and put their inputs in action, in workshops, but as well as in these projects like Operaíso or Duro or you know, stuff that I've done with a friend from London, or rather Athens. It's fine, it's fine. That I've done with Daphne or Scotchwager. It's stuff that that I wouldn't have done on my own, and my practice wouldn't be as rich as it is. And so I had to. I was almost obliged to invite these people into the show and to explore what we can do together in this space. And so half of the show was sort of like an archive of what we have done. And the other part was this active part that was enacting in the 11 events that we've done over a month.
So what you see, the left room with some images, basically the room with the show opening was totally empty. And with every single event, we do documentation, video, audio, drawings, text, and then put it the next day on the wall. So basically, this was a collaborative, maybe a participatory at least, but it doesn't even matter. It was about actually engaging people to journey through different ways.
It wasn't an emergent, to use a fancy word, an emergent show that was being generated while the show was going. So it wasn't really an exhibition. It was more like a show. We showed something and then we enacted, and then we showed, and we enacted, and we showed, and so on. And that was the dynamic for 30 days. And every second, third day, we had an event. And this event could be simple events like walking or contact improvisation or discussing about the future or perimetering, going around town on bikes, walking from gallery to gallery and stuff, meditation and so on.
Yeah. And then soon after, we kind of focused a lot on work. There was a lot of work involved and a little travel. And then at one point, maybe because my name comes from, I was named after a river. I'm sure that affected it, but the idea was born to start walking rivers, specifically River Una and River Socha. And then Corona happened. And basically, we opted to do Socha in 2020 and Una whenever it's possible. And 2020 in September, we walked for 6 days along Socha River, covering 125 kilometers.
No, but we covered 153 kilometers, but the river is 142 kilometers long. So roughly about the same distance.
I think it's 125.
No,
it doesn't. Anyway. It doesn't matter. It's not that it wasn't a long journey. It was 6 days, but it was far different from what we had experienced before, because our idea was try not to try not to, but to see how if we can take it a step further, the journey experience, and not rely on set paths, but make our own. And that coincided very well with following rivers, because the river has its own path, to try to stay as close as we can to the river bed, or how do you say it, to river?
Yeah, to the river flow, yeah.
And also in terms of how, of wanting to document this time around, kind of delving a little bit into the social aspects, wanting to be aware of our surroundings, and rivers and towns and cultures have emerged on rivers. So to walk through towns, although here in this case Socha is quite a short 6-day walk, so there weren't many towns and many people to meet. So it turned out that it was a very kind of intimate and solitary experience, being one with nature and with this river in specific, which really, I don't know, it really blew our minds, because in 6 days you could really track a life of a river, when it emerges at the source.
Yeah, at the spring.
When it's so hectic, it's so fast, it's so loud, it's like a youngster that's rebellious, yeah. And then it's truly severed. You can see the one before the last picture,
and then it hits the first river dam, and yeah. The river slows down, and the river slows down almost most of the flow until like 10 kilometers before its outflow.
Yeah.
And we almost understood the river, that it had the birth, it was a teenager, and then the life slowed it down, caged it, and forced it to go through certain stages that the river wasn't allowed to go any faster.
Yeah.
But it was gaining width, it was gaining depth, like quite literally, in its flow.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really like an analogy with the life of a person who then, in his middle age is kind of caged in and oppressed by the system. Like the river is even oppressed just by making it, managing it, so not allowing it to flow freely, and then adding dams and hydroelectric plants on top of that. It's really hurts it. We could relate to that, because it stagnates, it becomes slow. But then there's this merger at the last picture where it outflows into the Adriatic, near Trieste, in this beautiful landscape where everything is fine, where it finds where it again comes to its source and connects with everything. So I don't know, we were really impressed. And this is just a show, the documentation of the show we had in Nova Gorica, in Carinarnica.
And the exhibition space was right on the border. Yeah. It was right on the border, because the Socha is interesting because it flows through 2 countries, and in Slovenia it's called Socha, in Italy it's called Isonzo, and the moment it crosses the border from Slovenia to Italy, it changes gender. Yeah. Speaking of gender topics these days. So in Italy it's a male, and in Slovenia the river is female.
Yeah. And I don't know. Oh yeah, I just that was very interesting. And then also going into research and how some cultures really think of rivers as a female element, and there are very few that actually see it as a male.
Yeah.
But
so
yeah,
the show. So what you see here is a visual documentation in the form of photographs. We had audio recording, like a soundscape of our walking, a map where we walked, and a drawing that was put on the map, and on the shelf on the other side of the gallery contained a couple of objects, like from found objects like shipok, some notebook, a stone with moss, and then we gave water from the spring to people
for drinking. So the reason we were asked this, even now we keep being asked, we specifically chose not to record video but to do soundscapes, because we felt that if we really want to be present, even a photograph can take away this. It's just you're constantly distracted, or whenever you take a camera you lose this presence, but you gain something else that you can share with others. But still, we decided not to do videos on our flow walks, and record sounds, also because we felt it kind of gives you more place for imagination and your own interpretation, and time to listen and imagine being there. And actually, instead of seeing a video of what it was like, we felt that pictures would be enough, and documentation, photo documentation. And then
so we had 36 pictures from Socha, but then the next project was a little bit more problematic.
So the next project is really fresh, and it's from this summer. Just okay. So flow walking Sava. You can see it's not a typo, it's Sava, it's not Una, because Una had fallen into second, or let's put it third plan, because again of restrictions and crossing the borders between Croatia and Bosnia. But Sava also kind of stepped into the first plan in 2020, the same year when the pandemic started. This, as it was in Croatia, but in Ljubljana, municipalities was very strict about not being able to exit the premises of the municipality. So for us, Sava became the only wild place where we could go. And for many months, we were going there, like maybe if not daily, every second day, alternating Sava and Barje, which is this kind of marshy natural park on the south of Ljubljana. So we were going between there and there. But Sava was actually the wilderness that we craved. And parallel to that, in Slovenia, there was a big movement.
It was a big push. It was a big political push to force the. So Sava in Slovenia has 10 hydroelectric dams already built, and that's mainly on the lower end of Sava in Slovenia. There are a couple in the upper end, like maybe 2 or 3. But the majority is towards Krško and towards Croatian border. And so the government at the time, like previous government, wanted to force this law to legalize 10 new river dams on Sava. This would mean that 3 dams would be in Ljubljana alone, and there would be another 7 dams down in these river gorge going from Ljubljana towards Krško, which is quite remote, but still, I mean, people rebelled, and there was a huge public uprising, not only through demonstration but also politically. And so people organized and forced the referendum in, and at the referendum, I don't think we had ever had so much participation. I think it was 86% of the voting body that would come and reject the law that they wanted to pass in the get-go. So they had no mandate from the people to actually do anything with the river, in any river, but that river in particular. And so at that time we were like, I mean, Una accuses me that I suggested Sava, but I might take the blame. So we were kind of thinking, but why wouldn't we walk Sava? I mean, we looked at each other, was like, oh yeah, sure, it's doable. But then when you check how long it is, Sava is 992 kilometers long.
4 times Una.
4 times the length of Una. But that means that includes everything. Sava in Slovenia comes from 2 different rivers, and it joins in just after Bled. There is a confluence of 2 Savas, and then it flows down towards, well, across the Balkans as one river. And so altogether 990 kilometers was quite much longer than Socha. Socha was 150 kilometers, and it was walk in a park. So we thought, okay, well, let's think about it. And so we thought about it, and then we applied for these project space gallery exhibition space in the municipality, and we got the space. And then we had no other excuse not to do it, so we had to do it. And this summer, actually, on the 25th of June, we set from 2 different sides. So Una went from Bohin, and I went from, let's say, Kranjska Gora.
So Metod went from this upper,
from the upper,
line,
so like northern part of line, and Una went from the lower one. And we came together after a day and a half, and then we walked together to Belgrade.
Yeah. So again, I mean, we have 3,000 pictures here, only 9, because I mean, it's hard to, this time it's really hard to summarize this journey, because it had such a different effect on us in comparison to the one before, which we kind of not expected, but foresaw maybe or intuited, that Sava would be less of a solitary journey and more of a, you know, social and a place full of encounters. Already because Sava is, you know, known as the river that connects and joins peoples, flowing through 4 different countries, but also because there would be many towns. We would be going into you know, into Croatia and Bosnia and Serbia, where, you know, mentalities are known to be more hospitable in terms of, you know, noticing strangers and taking them in, and this all has proven to be
the case.
To be the case. So it's there is materials for a book, and now we're having a show, and I don't know what's the next phase, but definitely it's hard to talk about it. But what the premise was, again, to kind of to embark on this journey that is long enough to slow down time, to get back, you know, into this repetitive rhythm and this cycle, this more natural cycle, to again witness these things that we couldn't in the last Camino and Socha, this plain, the big plains of Slavonia, these big skies, that's you know, the sunsets and the sunrises, to live this magic that we've lived on the first Camino, really. And also to actually engage with people, to start talking about this issue that Sava is facing in Slovenia, and that is already being talked about for the past 20 years, and in Croatia, covering the last, I don't know, with the last Bandage mandate in 2018, there was a big conference in Zagreb about this plan to build these 10 smaller hydroelectric plants, which this is this sreća u nesreći, how do you say, this luck in the this luck that there's not enough funds to do it. So this still hasn't happened in Croatia, but there is this probability that it will once, if the foreign investments come, and to see again, to open different discussions about, you know, these periods that we expected would happen, and periods of transition, about the history that Sava has been testimony of in the past 30-something years, and the recent flows of people coming across Sava, trying to find better life here.
And so the technical part of Sava was the full length of the journey was 880 kilometers. We walked 730 kilometers of that length. 150 kilometers had to be on hitchhiking, buses, trains, for various reasons, including life-threatening, because there were parts in Lonskopolie where we were told there would be landmines or minefields. There was in Slovenia, there was this river gorge where it was so narrow that there is a road, a river, and the railway, and there is nowhere you can actually walk. You could potentially walk on the railway next to the tracks, but you know it's the main route from sort of like Trieste and Koper towards inland. So it was busy with trains. So we decided on several occasions to either hitchhike or take trains. And so that happened over 38 days. But that included 5 rest days, Ljubljana, Zagreb, Slavonski Brod, and Brčko, but also 5 days of recovery, my recovery, because I've fallen ill. I got a food poisoning and got a fever, and we had to pause for 5 days before I recharged and was able to continue the journey.
Yeah.
And so this is actually much more interesting than Caminos, because in Camino you can put your brain on a shelf and you just walk where the signs take you. You know, you just follow the signs. You just follow the yellow signs, yellow arrows. Here we had to wayfind. And these wayfinding sometimes not forced us, but sort of like allowed us to interact with the locals. And this interaction with the locals was something that we thought might happen, or we were craving, but actually
and planning as well.
And this is actually what made the whole journey, the whole experience, completely worthwhile. You know, regardless of the pain, regardless of the 43 degrees Celsius in Županja, regardless of food poisoning, regardless of blisters, regardless of mosquitoes or frogs or mud and like tarmac road, regardless of all these, this was really, really worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, when you I was just thinking, it's when you said it's more interesting, I maybe wouldn't say it's more interesting, it's different. It's a different experience, because I think the value of Camino is that you can put your brain on pause and really have this meditative, repetitive walk, or even encounter people and have this social aspects of walking together with people you don't know. But here, when a friend interviewed us, and you know, we actually figured out we could call it an artistic adventure. It really turned out to be that, because you really don't know what's going to happen. You have to rely on other people and on your own navigation skills, of course. So basically, yeah, these the encounters with people were something that we then wanted to focus more on. So we just have one image to show you here, but we're with this way kindly inviting you to see our show that's on until 15th of January in Ljubljana. because the on top there's documentation of us walking, but on the walls we've did kind of 12 stories.
Yeah, we distilled 12 stories out of many
that
to give a sample or a sense or a taste of what actually happened, of who we met, what they do, where we met them, when, and so
why
on.
we met them,
why we met them, and so on. Yeah,
and what we talked about, most importantly, because we realized we promised ourselves we would be as open as we can, and just to take and soak in stories, and this is what happened. But we expected to be talking more about the ecological aspects of the river, which could not happen, and it was no surprise, because at one point the traumas from the Yugoslav wars are still such a burden, and no new topics, or the lack of the economic statuses, and the lack of means of sustenance, and all these things really make people unable to even consider. Now people would want to have hydroelectric plants, because that would potentially bring new investments in. So how to approach this and engage in conversations, we realize it's so hard, because we're all, what we kind of taken, I think, most is that we all live in our bubbles, and we rarely interact with people who are different than us, and who come from different cultural, social, spiritual, religious, economic background. Maybe economic not, but but even that, if not to say class, but in terms of wealth, and
I mean, we encountered all sorts of people. We encountered people who worked in Switzerland for 30 years and moved back
and wanted
recently.
to run for mayors.
Wanted to run for mayors. We've met total recluses who are living on their farm, completely self-sustained. Practically the only technology that Vera would have, and that's the woman that we've met. The only
that's the woman on the picture on the left.
The only thing that she would have from today would be an old mobile phone. To people, to a world champion in canoeing on calm waters, to his partner who's an administrator at the police station, to somebody who works with Croatian waters, to some kayakers, to locals who were, I don't know, unemployed, and so on. You would never have encountered that if you drove by in a car. You just simply wouldn't. And that is the value of an action that's like that, because if you're not willing to sort of like give yourself to the elements, let's call it that way, you are not really gonna get much further in your thoughts. I mean, what you're seeing now really is just a documentation. The actual work, if we call it that, the drawing in space over time, and this is what we tend to call our journeys, space, my general research topic, over time, Una's research topic, can only really happen if you subject yourself to this space over time. And so this is this experience that we can't really convey. We can't explain it. We can talk about it in length. We can do several books about it. We can't give you the experience unless you go and experience part of the journey, which would be different to ours yourself.
Yeah, I mean, what we can do and what we try to do, and this time we've written a lot. I needed to go buy another, another diary, is try to communicate, and as you can see, I'm still kind of processing what has happened, because it was such an intense journey. But we can try to convey the emotion, and just to relate on what you were saying, when you fell ill, I fell ill after coming back, because it's what we started talking before. It's the adjustment to the new old non-normal was hard after such a journey that really kind of fills you no matter how much you drain yourself physically, but to adjust to this rhythm, that you kind of see that there's something odd with it. So it gave us so many lessons, including this, to be really open to people. So when we met Vera at 5 a.m, when we were planning to leave the camp, where we camped, in between sheep on a river bank, and she comes at 5 a.m, checking state of Sava. So we think, who does that? She's weird.
And we found her really weird, forgetting that we were the weird one.
Yeah.
Like, really, why would you walk the length of Sava? I mean, in the heat of the summer. I mean, seriously, it was neck breaking in at some parts, in some moments. But we were like, why would you come at 5:15 to check the state of Sava?
Yeah.
I mean, it's here. Okay, yes, it's different probably every day, but she's been doing it for years. She comes, checks, and encounters 2 aliens who are camping among sheep, and quite literally among sheep under some improvised roof, and we start a conversation, and she offers everything she has, and she has she comes across that she has very little material goods, like food or drink and so on. So we ask for a bit of water, and she brings some biscuits, and then we walk for those 5 kilometers together, which were mesmerizing, because she did not stop talking about herself.
She shared her whole story with us, and from what sounded, cuckoo and weird, we realized, no, this is, if you have to have role models, I mean, she is the extreme version, but we're all trying to find our emergency exit, and hers was going back to her ancestral, land farm, and not being able to go through transition that has happened, and basically from an economist who worked for this big consortium in Yugoslavia, in Serbia, going back and becoming a recluse, now what you would consider recluse, having very little contact with the Sremska Mitrovica, where her brother lives, but living off land and sourcing everything she has within the several kilometers, and we found that as a strong source of inspiration, but others would find that.
So she's almost like a proto off-grider.
No, she is.
I mean, she's a proto. I mean, like, because if we continue the way we continue as a civilization, we're gonna go split. One will go completely techno crazy, and the other ones will go completely nature way and off grid, away from those mental, technology developments, etc. And she is one of those proto sort of like people who live off grid, like completely.
Or maybe we'll find balance,
maybe,
and raise consciousness and find balance in how we use both resources.
So here we would like to open the floor for the conversation or questions, and we've talked too long already.
I have a question. So do you have, like, before you go to journey. Do you have strict artistic methodology or approach? So do you know how many pictures would you probably take or something like that?
Not really. I mean, we know what we want to achieve. Let's say, okay, we know we want to walk the length of that river or a path or whatever. Or we want to spend, I don't know, 10 hours doing the perimeter in a town, stuff like that. We know the area in a way, you know, we know that we're going to walk along the river. That also what we know. How long? We can project, because I do preliminary sort of like wayfinding routes we prepare before we go. So we have
on Google Earth.
On a Google Earth. So we kind of like know roughly what we can expect. And it was good because we already knew that in, let's say, Jasenovac, which was roughly on the halfway, we knew that 20 kilometers after Jasenovac, I couldn't find, or we couldn't find, a path or a dirt road or we couldn't find way for about 1.5 kilometers, 2 kilometers, let's say.
Okay.
We knew that from the other side there is a road that comes into a field, but 2 kilometers away, our dirt road or path would come and it stops. And so you can't just go and experiment. Okay, now we're going to walk 20 kilometers, and if it doesn't work out, you know, then you're losing another 20 kilometers to walk back to Jasenovac, taking the train and go the other way around. So we kind of prepared that way. But generally, we kind of calculated, we know that we can walk between 20 and 30 kilometers a day to keep it moderate. I mean, we could walk less.
Okay.
It would take us way longer, but we could also walk more, and it would destroy us after a couple of days. You know, we did. I think the longest day was after around Oborovo, 42 kilometers, which is long in 36 degrees.
Of course.
But when it comes to images or sounds, I think we relied mostly on, you know, on inspiration. I mean, we know what we wanted to record, definitely, you know, have all the, you know, all the hydroelectric plants, all the, you know, things that have
the
plants or other types of industry on the river. We know we wanted to record people, so to have portraits of people. And sounds whenever we'd hear something that we found, you know, was interesting, even like, you know, sounds of industries or of waste management and stuff like that. So every, you know, kind of to have the whole diapason, like the whole soundscape, not to embellish anything. So I mean, that's also with images, although as we were discussing, it's sometimes you're drawn to, you know, beautiful things, but we tried to kind of. I
mean, it's a documentary approach. It's not so artistic in a way. I mean, you see pictures, they're fairly descriptive. I mean, they're more coming from the photojournalist kind of area as opposed to, I don't know, experimental photography. It's the same with sound and the drawing that happens while we're walking, like the drawing of walking. That is what it is. I mean, if we need to go on a bus, that then gets dotted, and we then explicitly say this part wasn't walked, it was on a public transport or whatever. But generally, we would let the day progress and see how it goes. I mean, there would be days where we would go through the ugliest of villages, going into the ugliest of shops, and it would be hot. It would be, you know, we would walk on the tarmac. Just before the camp, we would walk towards Sava, where we wanted to camp, and we would like stop like in our tracks because we were confronted with the sign Mine. So so at that point, you turn on your heels and you walk where you came from, and then getting rewarded by the clearest of skies with billions of stars above you. Because most of the time we slept outside, we had a bit of tarp, like a roof.
This should be my next question. So actually, you go, but you have tent with you, so you go with tent and sleeping bags.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have a tent. We just
Tarp.
have like a tarp, like a roof.
Ah, okay.
Because the tent is not necessary for summer because it's warm, so you're not going to freeze to death. Tent would be useful if there was sub-zero conditions. But generally, yes, we would have sleeping bags, the mats to sleep on, as well as the mosquito net and these tarp.
Yeah. But we've calculated, we've used tarp 4 times only. We mostly slept under the open sky or at people's places that
Oh, wow.
yeah. And that was amazing. That was amazing. There was many times that people were like, nope, you're not camping. And we would want to camp because we would come like from Zagreb into Oborovo. So we're like, oh no, we've been 2 days in Zagreb. Yay, we're gonna sleep outside. And they're like, nope, you're sleeping at our place, giving you everything.
Yeah.
But I think what Diana also wanted to hear, or actually I would add to her question, for example, you knew that you are going, your concept for, you knew they are going to do photos instead of videos mainly, and you knew that you are going to present in the gallery as impressions, and also you knew that you are going to make a book about that.
Well,
no,
we don't know about the book yet. I mean, we're thinking about it, but the thing is, when we did Socha, we did have a deadline to present that journey, and we kind of made a kind of format, and so we used a similar format for Sava, and it will probably be a fairly similar format for Una, but it's in that case, yes, we do have some preconceived ideas how it's going to look. What we're going to document, we don't necessarily say, okay, we want, except we wanted to get quite a few pictures of the river itself, just the river, the water, nothing else, no land, no boat, no trees, no changing other shores, changing colors. You know, we just wanted to see the ripples in the water. Yeah. That's what was in idea preconceived.
Yeah.
as
I mean,
we
there
wanted
are
to document.
a few things, that the portraits, you know, the kind of the progression of the day, so to have you know, photos taken at different times of the day. But I think it becomes exercised, so we're not so thinking I need to do it now and now and now. With practice, it becomes something that you kind of collect throughout the day.
So it turns out we have quite a rigorous methodology.
Yeah.
But I would like to add the book that you did, Una, for your final master's degree, actually. This was what really, mostly what I remember is this very thick book, because you were writing each day times, like 00 happened to this and that, or 8:13 happened. You just was writing this time, day after day. That was pages and pages of time. I don't recall exactly what you were writing, but you were writing all in, and it was like this thick book about that.
Yeah. So it's, maybe I can show, just I can send a link in chat. So it's this, how does it work? Copy. Okay. So it was, this was the logging of every activity that I did for 5 days, for 5 months, every day. So basically I had a journal with me, like a little moleskin, and I was tracking everything that I did. And then I did 12 or 13 now. I'm seeing, no, I think, or 11 categories, you know, like leisure, I don't know, eating, sleeping, resting, socializing, learning, idle time, and stuff like that, categories of types of activities that I was doing. And then I did that data visualization out of it. And the idea was behind it, whether I can, by tracking this time, by rigorously tracking it, whether I can change my own habits, whether I can influence my own timeline. So will my habits stay the same when I see how much time I've spent, you know, I don't know, like playing your monitor, like losing time on, I don't know, watching a series? Will I change that, or will it keep the same? And it has shifted. So the moment you start being present, being observant, these things, I think, within you something starts changing. So did the experiment prove that, you know, I do.
Anybody else want to ask something that we don't speak all the time? Nina and some other. I only see Nina, I don't know why, on this screen, although I see everybody is there somehow. So anybody wants to ask something or give observations or something?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there any path you would like to walk to? I mean, any that you would like to repeat, like any river that like you would like to go?
So I
go over again.
Oh, you mean the river or parts of the river?
Maybe the complete river or like parts of the river.
Well, we
However you like.
We haven't walked that many rivers to say, oh, I want to do that river and that river. That was special. But in terms of Sava, I mean, Sochi is short. Sochi is 6 days. That's a week. It's a short holiday. But in terms of Sava, parts of Sava that I would want to walk, possibly around Lonsko Polje.
Yeah.
Possibly in the upper stream in Slovenia around its confluence. It's amazing there. I would want to spend more time there, and also probably Serbia and Bosnia.
I would want to walk Bosnia because we really had to negotiate which side are we going to walk on because of this scared of that we didn't, I don't know, sometimes you're reckless, but I think, I don't know, that's also part of the beauty. But, you know, our friends were warning us, you know, be more careful, get more informed. And then once you start searching it, you get paranoid because, you know, it
is also, actually, I think that is also migrant route somewhere there.
Yeah.
But
probably there is threats about that.
But in opposite direction. In opposite direction.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, okay.
Yes.
It's a funny story about migrants. I mean, we were for sure tracked from Jasenovac all the way to the moment we crossed to Brčko. Croatian police knew about us, even though one morning at 6 o'clock in the morning when we were having early breakfast, there were 2 police cars that came and you know they came to check what the hell we're doing.
They thought we were migrants.
Well, they thought we were migrants, but they saw us walking. They would understand that we're first too white. We are too colorful. We're having too colorful clothes or backpacks, and we're going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Wrong direction.
Yeah, of course.
That's main thing.
But police is always around there. But look, I mean, I was doing a preliminary research on the topic of migrants in Slovenia and how they're crossing illegally and blah blah, and they were constantly warning me, oh, but be careful, be very careful about the migrants. Migrants won't do anything to you. Migrants will hide.
Of course.
They don't want to be detected. They wanna be stealth. and so nothing happens.
And we didn't see nobody.
We didn't see a single migrant, but quite a few police cars. I mean, we saw quite a few camera traps, meaning, you know, there were these wildlife camera traps on trees. We heard that they were drones in the sky, but they're so high that you don't really hear them, and they're up there night and day with thermal imaging cameras for the night and so on and so forth. It's pretty bizarre, like all this infrastructure that Croatia is using and is displaying for the purpose of getting into Schengen is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Surveillance strategy. Yes.
Actually, you could ask for video and make your own video about yourself direct.
Yeah, actually, I mean, we could actually say, okay, on that day we were here, and here. Wherever we appear on the footage, we need those footages.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, it would be a lengthy bureaucratic process. I
probably you will never get it.
Well, interestingly,
but we could document the process.
In the UK, okay. In London you can get it, but you need to be very persistent. In Croatia,
probably not.
Nobody asked yet, probably. Okay, so I wish you all the best with your projects.
Thank you.
And for the rest, we see next Thursday.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, all the best.